now it's just like, I don't know, probably this was a good thing, us fighting. Because you have someone that, we come from two different sides, like, of the world. We still on the same path to get the same thing. You know, I gotta be in there with him. I gotta be able to, you know, his arm reach, his size, his power, the way he moving and things like that. I just gotta adapt as I fight him. I think it's gonna be a great event. Every time I fight, it's fireworks. Boxing wins come November the 14th. We just giving boxing what it needs, and that's excitement.
Ladies and gentlemen, stop whatever you're doing, because Gervonta "Tank" Davis just dropped a verbal knockout so heavy, it made Jake Paul rethink his entire boxing career in real time. This wasn't just a podcast, this was a public execution with microphones. Joe Rogan sat there trying to play mediator, but let's be honest, this moment made the Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather trash talk look like kindergarten recess. Tank didn't just talk his talk, he practically threatened to rearrange Jake Paul's jawline if he ever steps foot in his weight class again. And the way he said it, calm, cold, and terrifyingly confident, like a hitman discussing grocery lists. The internet's already calling it the most disrespectful moment in podcast history, and honestly, they might be right. This entire thing makes the Kardashians' family fights look like a group meditation. The tension was thick enough to slice with a championship belt, so grab your popcorn and protect your feelings, because this isn't boxing beef. This is boxing warfare. And trust me, once you hear what Gervonta really said off camera, you'll never look at Jake Paul the same again. Let's set the stage. Picture it. Joe Rogan's podcast studio. Dim lighting, whiskey glasses half full, testosterone levels hitting record highs, and the air so thick with ego it could choke a heavyweight. Joe's sitting there, headset on, that classic "I'm about to stir the pot" grin spreading across his face. Across from him sits Gervonta "Tank" Davis, one of the most feared knockout artists in boxing history. Calm, collected, like a cobra coiled in silence. Then somewhere in the conversation, Joe brings up the one name that turns every serious boxer's eye into a death stare: Jake Paul. That's when the energy in the room shifted. Joe had no idea he just triggered a live grenade. Gervonta leaned back, smirked, and said, real quiet, almost whispering, "If Jake ever steps in my lane, I'll retire him before he even starts." And the way he said it, you could feel the chill. Even Joe had that half laugh, half "oh god, he means it" look. The internet, my friends, has not stopped talking since. Now, let's be clear. Jake Paul's made a name punching retired MMA fighters, influencers, and guys with day jobs. But this was different. Gervonta Davis is the real deal. A knockout specialist, a silent storm. When he talks, people listen and run. And hearing him warn Jake Paul on one of the biggest platforms in the world was like watching a lion politely explain to a house cat why the jungle has rules. Twitter erupted within seconds. One fan tweeted, "Tank just verbally ended Jake Paul's boxing career live on Rogan's show." Another said, "Joe Rogan just hosted a pre-funeral for Jake Paul's confidence." Even the memes started rolling in before the episode ended. Pictures of Jake's face photoshopped on a milk carton, with "missing, last seen talking too much" written underneath. But let's rewind for a second. This wasn't random. This tension had been brewing for months. Ever since Jake Paul started calling himself the face of boxing, real fighters have been rolling their eyes so hard, it's become a medical concern. Tank Davis, though, he took it personally. Because while Jake's out here selling pay-per-views and posing for YouTube thumbnails, Tank's been building a legacy. Real fights, real opponents, real blood. When Rogan asked Tank about Jake's success in boxing, Tank didn't even flinch. He just laughed, leaned in and said, "That boy's swimming in a pool he didn't build." Boom. A single sentence that could start a war. That line alone went viral within hours, spawning merch, TikTok clips, and fan edits with dramatic slow motion. People were quoting it like scripture. Then Joe, being Joe, tried to keep it fair by saying, "But Jake's been training hard, man. He's improving." You could almost hear the room gasp. Gervonta's face dropped the smile, looked dead into the camera and said, "Training hard don't make you a fighter. Getting punched and coming back does." And that right there, that's when things went from casual to combat ready. Because Jake Paul, let's be honest, built his empire on attention. The man knows how to sell fights before he ever steps in the ring. But for Tank, attention isn't currency, respect is. He's not the loudest man in the room. He's the one everyone's too scared to interrupt. Fans started comparing this face-off to the moment Mayweather first addressed Conor McGregor. But this one felt more lethal. There was no humor, no trolling, no entertainment beef. This was straight warning energy. A message to anyone confusing boxing with influencer drama. Stay in your lane, or you'll get folded like laundry. Clips from the podcast spread faster than a Jake Paul promo code. The YouTube comments were ruthless. Jake should start a new career, maybe pottery or yoga, one said. Another wrote, Tank's tone alone just dropped Jake's next fight's pay-per-view numbers. Even UFC fighters were jumping in, posting laughing emojis and tagging Jake, saying, you might want to sit this one out, champ. Meanwhile, Tank's calm demeanor became a meme of its own. People were calling it the death glare heard around the internet. One fan said, he didn't raise his voice once. That's how you know he's dangerous. And honestly, they weren't wrong. But the deeper story here, the one everyone's whispering about, is that this wasn't off the cuff. Sources close to Tank claim he's been waiting for the right moment to check Jake Paul. Apparently, there were private talks months ago where Jake's team tried to bait Tank into a cross-promotion exhibition. Tank reportedly laughed it off, saying, I don't do play fights. And now, on Joe Rogan's podcast, he just aired out that tension in front of millions. That's not a warning, that's a declaration. Even Joe looked stunned. He leaned back and said, man, that sounds serious. Tank nodded slowly and replied, it's not serious, it's facts. And that silence afterward? It was pure power. The kind of silence where you know you just witnessed history. What's wild is how Jake Paul responded later, or rather didn't. Normally, Jake's quick to clap back online. He'll drop a 10-minute video, call out his opponent, post training clips, and plug his prime drink or whatever. But this time, radio silence, just one cryptic tweet. I don't fight scared men. I fight legends. And oh, the internet tore that apart. Fans replied with screenshots of Gervonta's record, undefeated, knockout king, multiple weight division champ, basically saying, bro, this is the legend. One user wrote, Jake Paul's playing checkers while Tank's playing chess, blindfolded. Another said, you can't influence your way out of a left hook. Behind the scenes, industry insiders are saying, this moment shifted the energy in boxing. Promoters are whispering that Tank versus Jake might actually happen, not because it makes sporting sense, but because the internet's eating it up. It's drama, it's danger, it's dollar signs. But the truth is, Tank doesn't care about Jake's fame. He said it best on Rogan's show, I fight for legacy, he fights for likes. That one line hit harder than a right hook to the ribs. It summed up the entire culture clash. Real fighter versus digital disruptor. And that's why this Joe Rogan episode will go down as the moment boxing drew a line in the sand. One side's fighting for clout, the other's fighting for history. And when those worlds collide, somebody's getting knocked off their pedestal. Because let's be real, Gervonta Davis doesn't talk unless he's ready to back it up. And when he gives a warning this sharp, it's not a prediction, it's a spoiler. By the time the Joe Rogan clip hit its 2nd million views, the internet had already turned Gervonta Davis's warning into digital wildfire. Every meme page, fight blog, and gossip outlet was feeding the flames. Twitter was a war zone. Instagram was a battlefield. TikTok, pure chaos. People were stitching the clip with sound effects of nuclear explosions, dramatic zoom-ins, and captions like, Jake Paul just entered the danger zone. Gervonta hadn't even thrown a punch, yet it felt like Jake was already wobbling. Within hours, celebs began chiming in like spectators at a gladiator match. 50 Cent posted the clip with the caption, someone tell this YouTube kid to chill before he ends up on pay-per-view for the wrong reasons. Snoop Dogg reposted it with crying emojis, writing, Jake better call Logan for backup. Even Mike Tyson dropped a comment on the podcast page saying, Tank got that killer look. I seen it before, in the mirror. And then, like clockwork, the Paul brothers started doing what they do best, turning chaos into content. Jake's brother Logan jumped on his podcast, impulsive, trying to defend the family brand. He said, listen, Tank's a beast, but Jake ain't scared of nobody. But even Logan's tone sounded more like damage control than confidence. Fans picked up on it instantly. One comment said, Logan looks like he's reading Jake's eulogy in advance. Meanwhile, Gervonta wasn't even online. No tweets, no stories, just silence. And that silence spoke volumes. The more Jake's team talked, the more it felt like they were shouting into a void. Tank's calm was terrifying. That assassin-type calm that says, "I'll see you when I see you." But the real escalation came when Joe Rogan himself uploaded a follow-up clip. Rogan said, "I've had a lot of fighters on this show, but that moment with Gervonta, you could feel it. He wasn't playing." And if Joe Rogan, the king of composure, says a fighter's energy was different, then it was different. Fans flooded the comments. Joe looked scared for Jake. You can hear the tension in the air. Tank's warning hit harder than half of Jake's punches. And here's where it got messy. Jake's camp tried to flip the narrative. His coach released a statement saying, "We respect Tank, but Jake's been calling out real fighters for a reason. He wants to test himself." Translation? Panic control. Because the last thing they wanted was for Jake's fearless disruptor image to crumble. But the internet doesn't care about PR. It feeds on authenticity, and Tank was giving that in spades. No theatrics, no shouting matches, just cold confidence. One journalist summed it up perfectly. Jake Paul sells fights with noise. Gervonta Davis sells fear with silence. Then came the memes that truly sealed Jake's fate. Someone edited a clip of Tank's warning over the famous Undertaker bell sound, and it hit 5 million views in a day. Another viral post had Tank's face photoshopped onto Thanos saying, "You took your shot, Jake, now I'll take mine." Even boxing legends started chiming in. Bernard Hopkins called Tank's statement a masterclass in psychological warfare. But things got real when Showtime executives reportedly started floating the idea of a crossover fight. Rumor has it, they even reached out to both camps quietly, asking if there was any legitimate interest. Jake's team responded, maybe. Tank's team? One word, sure. That alone made headlines. It wasn't a yes or no. It was a challenge. And that's when the internet officially lost its mind. Fans began fantasy booking the fight like it was a Marvel crossover event. Edits of Tank versus Jake posters popped up everywhere, stylized like blockbuster movie trailers. The problem child versus the knockout king. One fan said, "If this actually happens, the pre-fight trash talk alone will break the internet." Another wrote, "I'll sell my car just to watch Tank humble Jake live." But Jake, being Jake, couldn't resist the spotlight forever. He finally broke his silence in an Instagram live, acting like the whole thing was overblown. "Yo, I respect Tank," he said. "He's one of the best, but people need to stop acting like I'm scared. I've been calling out legends since day one." And just like that, he opened Pandora's glove box. Because Tank doesn't do back and forths online, but his trainer did. The next morning, he posted a photo of Tank hitting pads with the caption, "We don't tweet, we train." That line hit social media like a thunderclap. It got reposted by every major fight page within hours. One comment read, "Jake's Wi-Fi about to take more hits than his jaw." Meanwhile, fans started revisiting Jake's old fights, pointing out how every one of his knockouts came against guys who were past their prime or smaller in weight. "He never faced anyone like Tank," said one YouTuber in a viral breakdown video. "If they fight, Jake's career will end in one round." And that's being generous. Even Dana White, yes, the UFC's own fight promotion wildcard, got in on the action. He laughed in an interview and said, "Jake's talking crazy again, huh? He better not call out Tank unless he's got a life insurance policy." That clip alone pulled 1 million views in under 6 hours. Everywhere Jake looked, the narrative was slipping away. He wasn't the bad boy of boxing anymore. He was the kid being publicly reminded that boxing ain't YouTube beef. It's blood, sweat, and broken noses. Meanwhile, Gervonta's team stayed quiet but strategic. Tank appeared at a few boxing events, smiling, shaking hands, wearing shades like a man who knows the world's watching. When reporters asked about Jake, he'd just grin and say, "He knows where to find me." That was it. No rant, no promo speech, just the type of calm that could freeze lava. It's the oldest rule in combat sports. The loudest man usually falls the hardest. And right now, Jake's microphone was starting to sound like a countdown clock. By midweek, every outlet from ESPN Ringside to TMZ Sports had covered the story. Headlines read, "Gervonta Davis issues ruthless warning to Jake Paul. Is a super fight next?" Analysts were split. Some said Jake's delusion would push him into the fight just for clout. Others said his ego couldn't afford another L. especially against a knockout artist with Tank's resume. And here's where it got eerily poetic. Jake started posting motivational quotes. You know it's bad when the man who built his empire on trolling suddenly starts tweeting, "Pressure makes diamonds." Fans instantly dragged him. One reply said, "Pressure also bursts pipes, bro." And Tank's bringing the water. Even Logan tried to steer the ship, saying, "This whole Tank situation's good for boxing. It brings eyes to the sport." But people weren't buying it. The public had made up its mind. Jake was no longer the hunter. He was the hunted. And that's when the conversation shifted from will Jake fight Tank to will Jake survive Tank? Because everyone knew, deep down, that this wasn't just about boxing anymore. It was about pride, about legacy, about one man reminding the other that there are levels to this game, and Gervonta Davis owns the highest floor. The line between entertainment and real danger had officially blurred, and as the world watched Jake Paul scramble to keep his confidence intact, Gervonta didn't have to lift a finger. The warning had already done the damage. The days following Gervonta Davis's chilling warning on Joe Rogan felt less like boxing news and more like a Netflix docuseries unfolding in real time. Every hour brought a new twist, a fresh take, or another viral clip dissecting what might go down as the most intimidating podcast moment in combat sports history. Jake Paul's fans were split, half screaming clout chase, the other half nervously asking, "Yo, what if Tank's serious?" Spoiler, Tank was absolutely serious. Behind the scenes, promoters smelled money and fear. Because this wasn't your average YouTuber call-out. This was a legitimate star of the sport, basically telling an internet mogul, "Try me and I'll end your content calendar." Rumor has it, managers from Showtime, DAZN, and even Netflix reached out to gauge interest in a crossover mega fight. Tank's camp reportedly didn't even flinch. They just said, "Send the papers." That single response started circulating in group chats like leaked scripture. Meanwhile, Jake Paul's silence became louder by the day. The same guy who once dropped daily vlogs talking smack to entire fight leagues was suddenly quiet as a library at midnight. Instead, his team tried to spin it into strategic discipline. But let's be honest, fans weren't buying that. When your brand is built on trash talk and you stop talking, that's not strategy, that's survival instinct. The narrative had officially flipped. The internet, once entertained by Jake's bravado, had turned on him. TikToks comparing his fearless fighter persona to clips of Tank's brutal knockouts racked up millions of views. One viral video showed Jake throwing shadow punches cut together with Tank knocking out opponents mid-round, captioned, "Expectation versus reality, the Paul problem." It was savage. It was funny and it was true. Even boxing purists, who had once dismissed Jake as a joke, were now oddly grateful. Why? Because Tank's warning had reignited interest in real boxing again. Commentators started saying, maybe it took a YouTuber's ego to remind people what real fighters look like. Think about it. This wasn't just Tank defending his pride. It was him defending the sport itself. Meanwhile, Gervonta moved like a man unbothered. He showed up to training sessions, sparred with the same cold precision, and occasionally posted cryptic lines on Instagram like, "Silence speaks louder than hype." Every post was like gasoline to the fire. Fans flooded his comments with, "Please end Jake's career. Tank versus Paul. Make it happen." And this is the real YouTube Knockout Challenge. But here's where the story took a wild turn. Industry. Whispers began suggesting that Jake was actually considering the fight, not because he thought he could win, but because he couldn't afford to look scared. His entire empire runs on controversy. Back down, and you're irrelevant. Step up, and you might get broken, physically and publicly. It was a lose-lose scenario, the perfect storm for internet drama. Reports from inside Jake's training camp said the energy had shifted. Normally, his team's all about flashy content, gym clips, heavy bags, dramatic call-outs. But now, closed doors, no cameras, serious faces, as one insider allegedly put it. Jake's realizing there's levels to this. Tank's not a prop in his movie. He is the movie. And the irony, while Jake was training to prove himself, Tank was training like he didn't even know Jake existed. His coach even said in an interview, "We don't train for social media. We train for survival." That line became an instant classic. It trended on X for 2 straight days. The ripple effect hit harder than anyone expected. Sponsors began choosing sides. Brands that once championed Jake's fighter influencer story started quietly unfollowing him. Meanwhile, companies known for backing real athletes began flirting with Tank's camp. One fan joked, even his sponsors are switching corners before the bell rings. By now, the Joe Rogan episode had passed 10 million views, making it one of the most re-watched moments in podcast history. Rogan himself did another episode and admitted, "I don't think Jake realizes how serious Tank is. That wasn't a call out, that was a promise." And when Joe Rogan says something's a promise, the world listens. Then came the breaking point. A leaked clip surfaced from inside Tank's gym. He was mid-sparring session, gloves cracking like thunder, and in between rounds, someone off-camera said, "So when's the Jake fight?" Tank just smiled and said, "Whenever he's brave enough." That one line, "whenever he's brave enough," became the internet's new slogan. Shirts, edits, memes, TikToks, everything. It was like the modern-day version of, "You can't handle the truth." Jake tried one last attempt to control the narrative. He dropped a YouTube video titled, "The Truth About Gervonta Davis," but instead of confidence, it reeked of desperation. He tried to act unfazed, saying, "People forget I've been in wars." The comments? Unforgiving. Against retired NBA players? Bro, Tank would turn your boxing gloves into oven mitts. Delete this before he sees it. The internet had chosen its champion. And spoiler alert, it wasn't the guy with a vlogging past. Even within the boxing community, the tides had turned completely. Journalists who once criticized Tank for his silence now praised his discipline. "He's the anti-Jake," wrote one columnist. "He doesn't tweet, he doesn't talk, he just wins." Others said the moment was symbolic. This is the sport reclaiming its dignity from YouTube chaos. But the most shocking twist came when insiders leaked that promoters were working behind the scenes to finalize a summer fight date. If the deal goes through, it could become the highest grossing crossover event since Mayweather versus McGregor. Only this time, the stakes feel way more personal. This isn't a clash of styles, it's a clash of eras. And let's be honest, Jake might talk a big game, but stepping into the ring with Gervonta Davis isn't a boxing match. It's like walking into a thunderstorm wearing copper shoes. You don't win that. You just hope to survive long enough to tell the story. Fans already know how this script ends. Tank walks out silent, Jake walks out loud. But only one walks out standing. Because when Tank Davis says, "I'll retire him before he even starts," that's not bravado, that's prophecy. The aftermath of this entire saga has already reshaped how people view both men. Jake, once the face of influencer boxing, now looks like the kid who accidentally wandered into a shark tank. And Gervonta? He's not just the king of knockouts anymore. He's the face of what happens when the internet forgets that real fighters still run this game. As one fan perfectly put it, Jake Paul's been living in the algorithm. Gervonta Davis just pulled the plug. And honestly, you can feel it. The tension, the build-up, the electric sense that something massive is coming. If this fight happens, it's not going to be just a match. It'll be a cultural reset, a reminder that hype fades, but power doesn't. Because in the world of boxing, there's talking, and then there's tanking, and Gervonta Davis just proved which one leaves a bigger mark. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Gervonta Tank Davis turned a casual Joe Rogan podcast into a full-on heavyweight psychological warfare session. Jake Paul might have thought he was sitting pretty on YouTube, but after that episode, he's basically sitting on a time bomb made of memes, tweets, and shattered ego dust. If you made it this far, oh, you're part of the real Fight Club now. The drama weight division, where every jab is a headline, and every episode hits harder than a Tank uppercut. So before you scroll away, do what real champions do. Smash that like button like it owes you money, and subscribe before Tank lands his next knockout quote that'll have the whole internet melting down again. Drop a comment below. Whose side are you on? The calm, collected Tank Davis or the chaos-loving Jake Paul? Or are you here just to see who loses their mind first on social media? Either way, we're grabbing popcorn. Stay tuned, because around here, the truth doesn't sleep. It spars, it swings, and it goes viral faster than Jake's boxing career did on TikTok. This is the Punch Press, where gossip hits harder than the gloves ever could. Now get ready. The next knockout story's already loading.